Hello, I'm William Gallagher and this is 58 Keys, which as ever, as always, is for writers. Writers like you and me who use and who write on Macs and iPhones and iPads. And do please subscribe or patronise me. Because if this is useful to you, this particular thing, I don't want you to miss what follows, the series that follows. Because this is the first of 4 special 58 Keys entirely devoted to the writing app Scrivener. I should say Apple is launching new devices as we speak, and actually looks like some will be particularly good for us as writers. So there will be an extra 58 Keys about those slotted in somewhere. But otherwise, it's Scrivener to the end of the month, and it's Scrivener in 4 very specific parts. In a moment, there's why. So why do writers like Scrivener? I mean, that will include showing you around the app. It'll be pointing out the major features that appeal to people, plus why writers do not like Scrivener, which actually is a shorter list. Then in the next edition, it's all about where. This will chiefly be about using Scrivener on mobile devices, so the iPad and even the iPhone. There's going to be a little bit of repetition of why writers like it and how it works a little bit, but then this is where there'll be all you need to know about the problems, too hard a word, but the issues of using Scrivener across multiple devices. Then after that part 3 is what. What exactly can you do with this app? Which really, it's a deeper dive into the extras. The bits you never need to know exist, but which are supremely useful when you do know them and when you do want them. These first 3 editions of 58 Keys are going out throughout March 2026, each one released on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. UK time. But the 4th one, the 4th Wednesday at 7 p.m. UK time, that's going to be a live 58 Keys, and it's how. Tell me how you use Scrivener, or ask me any questions about it, anything that's come up over the other episodes. I will tell you now, though, it'll help me so much if you would start asking questions in the comments below here, and that way I can look up the answers and seem really informed on the live show, and hopefully useful on the live show. Links to all of these episodes will be in each episode's description as they are released. But for now, it's time we've got to get into it, haven't we? Scrivener, a truly superb tool for writers, and here's why. This is what Scrivener looks like, pretty much out of the box, so to speak. I mean, the thing is, I've had it so long and used it so much, and you can customize it so much that I've probably customized it a bit more than you have. So if your copy of Scrivener, especially if you buy it free, doesn't look quite like this, it is just that I've fiddled, and you're going to fiddle the same way later. One thing that will look the same, if we actually just let's take a step back to the very first opening of the app, you always get this set of project templates. The interactive tutorial, that is very good, but otherwise I offer that you can forget it all. Like all templates in all writing apps, it seems to me that they date from when we used to print things out to send to people. Now you're going to be emailing the text documents to your publisher or publishing it yourself, for which plain text might be best too. And Scrivener is both praised and criticised for how you can use it to prepare documents for publishers or for publishing yourself. But actually, that's a process that comes at the end, and we'll touch on that shortly. Still, okay, there are all of these designs and plenty of other people, plenty of other writers like them. So do take a look through, but I suggest that there are really only 3 things in this opening screen to care about. The blank template is one. I honestly don't think I've ever started any Scrivener project with anything else. And then once you're writing on things, there is this open recent drop down and open existing. Open existing seems to be quite limited. It seems to be solely for opening, well, existing Scrivener documents that for some reason isn't in your recents list. Maybe you're doing a lot of them. I don't know. It's not for opening, say, Microsoft Word documents into Scrivener. You can do that, and you can open Google Docs as well, and you can kind of open Pages documents, but not here. We'll cover all of that in part 3. But for now, let's assume that you have opened up Scrivener and you are writing in it from scratch. Choose blank, click Create, give the document a nice name, and then press return or click on the create button. This is Scrivener. This main section, the largest blank space, is called the editor. This is where you will write everything. And actually, you could ignore all of the rest. Just write away in there as you like. I'm not knocking that. One of the reasons, actually, for liking Scrivener, for using Scrivener, is that writing in it is actually a pleasure. That's not something I can quantify. It feels to me as if, for example, it's lighter than Microsoft Word. But really, practically, the benefits of Scrivener over Word, Pages, or just about anything else come when you are writing a long form piece, like a novel or a non-fiction book. This is what Scrivener was built for. And the most obvious of its tools to help with that is this thing, like the sidebar to the left. It's called the binder. Scrivener, the makers of Scrivener, Literature and Latte, want you to picture an old-style ring binder that has your manuscript in it, plus a lot of other things. When you start a new Scrivener document, this is what you get, unless you're using one of the templates. Trash is, well, it's just what you think, and you can drag parts of your novel to that, and I do that far too often. Research, that's a huge boon in Scrivener, and you must not go until you've seen what that's for. But then the main part is where it's called draft, and slightly indented there, untitled document. On the Mac, you can double click to edit those titles, change them to something like chapter 1. And if you click once on untitled document, you can hit return and add another untitled document right beneath it. Press return once more to give that a name, or just enter it as untitled. And with it still selected, well, you can press return again and make a third document, and so on for as long as you like. If you're a planner type of writer and you already have an outline, well, yeah, then you can schlep through adding these untitled documents and naming them whatever you need, and those can be the chapters in your final book. Speaking of outlines, though, if you like outlining, then you can click on this third icon here and go into Scrivener's actual outlining feature. Well, I think you've gathered from my tone that I'm not a fan. I'm not against it, but I'm not a fan of Scrivener's outlining. I suppose really maybe part of it is that I'm just not a fan of outlining. But when I am required to deliver an outline, it takes something special to get me outlining. And Scrivener's built-in one, well, it does seem less academic than Word. It does seem less clunky than Word somehow. And compared to Apple Pages outliner, well, that one's pretty worthless. So, go Scrivener. But then there's Omni Outliner, which is a totally different app. I enthuse about this at every excuse. It's exceptional for getting ideas down and having you work them up into plans or an outline or anything like that. For me, Scrivener's more useful tool for working with long documents is that binder. You have all of these untitled documents that you can rename to chapter 1, 2, or whatever, or prologue. And then say, you come to your senses and realize that prologue is just holding up the reader before they get to chapter 1 and there's no reason for it. Well, then you can drag the prologue down to the bin, or you can drag it around to a different spot in your book. Drag it up and down as you need. Drag any chapter up and down. If you do this kind of thing for long enough, you end up with that draft heading and maybe a couple of dozen chapters that you can rearrange at will. You do not have to do anything more. Even just like this, right? You can be working away in chapter 2 and then with a click be over in chapter 17 instantly. It is excellent. Scrivener is excellent for moving around your book rapidly. And so is this. Click on the center icon there, the orange quartet of squares, and you get a corkboard kind of view. It is like having an index card for each chapter. And just as you can drag chapters up and down the binder, you can drag these cards around right here in front of you. Rearrange your whole book by seeing it laid out and dragging chapters anywhere you want. Try doing that in Word or Pages. What you see by default on these cards, I should say, is the opening text of that chapter, whatever you've written in the chapter already, if you have written anything at all, and that can be fine. But when you're looking at this from a structure or rhythm or pacing point of view, actually, the opening lines of the chapter text, they may not be all that much use. It could even be a problem, really, couldn't it? Because I don't think you can always see from the opening paragraphs that this is where Wilbur is revealed to be the god of chocolate towards the end of the chapter. So come with me back out of the corkboard view, please, by clicking on the first of this trio of icons, and we're into a chapter. Now, if you click on the I for Inspector icon at the very top right, you get this pop-out panel. It should start with a section called Synopsis, but if it doesn't, because you've been in here before, because you've been fiddling, really, and just done other things, well, then click on the first icon of this set. Then you should see a small text box. But again, if you have been in and out around this section, it might look slightly different. You can easily have changed things here. Synopsis might just be written as a heading right above the word notes with no space for you to write in. If that's the case, click on the disclosure triangle right next to the word synopsis, and boom, there is your text box. Write a short description, a synopsis of this chapter in that top box there. And if we now click back into the corkboard view, there is that synopsis on that index card. You could schlep through your whole book, adding these back in, adding these little chapter synopses when you're finished, but I suggest you'd be better off doing it as you get to each chapter. And actually, there is nothing to say that you need to have written the chapter. If you're a planner, you could create a blank chapter and then put the synopsis, the outline text, in this block. I don't want to go too far into this inspector thing and what it offers yet, but you can see there are lots of other things. It does do much more than give you a box for the synopsis. But just for one example, because I've realized, and you've already seen that note section right underneath the synopsis, and you've already realized that this is where you can write some notes. Wilbur / chocolate, or anything else that you want that will help you to be reminded of anything else that needs to happen in this chapter. Fine. But then I kept missing this. Back up by the heading synopsis, there is an icon of an image. Click on that and your synopsis text box changes to a picture box. Drag in an image if you want. If it's the wrong image, or you just change your mind, right click on it and choose clear image. But when you have an image there, when you're happy with the image you've got in there, skip over to the corkboard view, and there it is in place of your synopsis text. And that synopsis text isn't lost. Of course it isn't lost. You can switch back to it by clicking on the text icon, the icon that's now where the image, the picture icon was a moment ago. I keep talking about chapters, and Scrivener has all of these ways of organising them, the dragging up and down, but it's as much, Scrivener's as much about hiding what you don't want to see now as it is giving you this really fast access to any chapter. And both to aid you and optionally later to help when you are preparing to send your writing off to someone, you can do this. You can add a folder. Add a folder by either clicking on this icon at the bottom left, or by choosing the project menu and new folder, whichever you prefer. And then you can group chapters into those folders by dragging them in there. And this way, when you're done with, say, I don't know, Act 1 or maybe Book 1 of a 12-book series, you can click on the disclosure triangle to fold up all of those chapters, getting them out of your way while you concentrate on the next bits. And one more thing. There's always one more thing with Scrivener. You can color code your chapters. You can give each one a different icon, if you like. I don't think I've ever done that I've never bothered with icons, but I have, and I continue to use colors. Red for this chapter needs work, blue for this first draft complete, green for finished. I like that one, if any writing is ever finished. Yeah, but now, all of this so far is about organisation. All of it has really been about organising and sorting and arranging, and we need to write something. And this is somewhere else where Scrivener blossoms for me, and where all of this organisation becomes increasingly useful as you write more and more. Look at this. the largest blank area in Scrivener, the editor. Click in there, start typing, keep going, stop. One word after another. Scrivener has things like styles. It has almost everything you would expect in any word processor, but then as long as you are organized enough to take a moment to start a new chapter every now and again, instead of literally just writing start to finish in the same space, you have this. Say you introduce a character in chapter 1 and she leaves in chapter 17. You can click on chapter 1 and then click on chapter 17 and then click back. You can jump instantly between the two to compare her entrance and exit. How have you introduced the character? How have you let them go? That is excellent. That is, again, better than Word or Pages, but it's also far from everything Scrivener can give you. Do this instead. Click to select chapter 1, then hold down the Command key and click chapter 17. The editor window now shows you chapters 1 and 17, one after another, with nothing in between. You can scroll up and down as if those were the only two chapters you had. And if you now click the Corkboard icon, you will see just 2 cards, like that's all you've done. 2 cards or 3 cards, or you can command click any number of chapters like this. But back to the editor view, and my absolute favorite thing in the entire app. Let's just make sure we've selected one chapter on its own. And now if you click this note light icon at the top right of the editor window, you can split the screen. Initially, you get 2 views of the same chapter, and sometimes I've had long chapters that's been worth having 2 views of it. But if you now click on a different chapter, suddenly you've got the 2 side by side. Both are fully editable, and you can change whichever chapter is shown in whichever side. Notice how the header of one side is darker than the other. That's the selected one. That is the side that will change if you choose another chapter. Click at the top of the other one, and now that's the side that will change. This is how I do it, and it helped. Let me give you one example, please. I had a particular problem on just a marathon non-fiction book. The book had to be told in chronological order. This thing I was writing about, that was essential. But it was completely dependent on a lot of interviews, and one really key person just wasn't physically available until near the end of the process. And that meant what he then told me had to be inserted into many, many chapters. Now, you're a writer, so you immediately get that this wasn't just a case of split a paragraph, paste in a quote, close up, get out. What he told me also affected what I knew about the subject. So there was a lot of rewriting in over half of the chapters in the book. But what all this meant is that by the end, I had actually thoroughly confused myself. Most particularly, I was really, really afraid that I had introduced this person more than once. You explain who someone is the first time you mention them, of course, and then as the book goes on, you find different ways to remind people which person you're talking about, but you don't repeat the whole introduction. And because I'd been jumping around all over the place, and I'm pretty sure it was one of the ending chapters I first did, because the quote was great for that, I was afraid I'd done that. So I selected just the chapters he was in, and then I compared each one of them exactly like this. You could do that too, but actually, instead of splitting the screen vertically like I like, hold down the Option key and you can split horizontally. And actually, I should say, once you've done all that, eventually you want to come back to one chapter. To come back out, you click on just that split icon. Doesn't matter where it is, either of the split icons. Click on that. It's one in each window, but it goes back to the single one. One last thing about splitting the windows like this, which actually is huge because it has to do with something else that I believe only Scrivener does. Look at this place. This is the now familiar Scrivener window with a very short chapter in it. If I click that split, as you've seen before, I now get 2 chapters, fine. But look at the research folder. If I go over here and click on the disclosure triangle to open up that, I can see there's something in there. Click on that in the sidebar, and now one side of my split window is showing, well, in this case, a PDF. from my research folder. Click on that split, unsplit icon, and now you're just seeing the research if that's what you want. So Scrivener lets you read research, lets you collate it, lets you put it alongside your writing. I mean, that one's a PDF, but you can put web pages in there, you can drag audio into it, you can add just about anything you come across in your research, which means when you open your one Scrivener document for this book, you open that to start writing, you have also got all of your research, all of it, whatever it is, whatever format it's in, all right there. And then, if you want, you can choose to show any of that research right next to the chapter you are working on. Great. So actually, same book, the non-fiction. When I transcribed that person's interview, for instance, well, I put it in research, I had the complete text of the transcript right next to any chapter I was working on. We will have a little bit more about research in part 3 of this series because there is more to say. But for now, there are just 2 things left this time to make sure you know about. One is Scrivener's compiling feature, and the other is why writers do not like Scrivener. Yeah, compile. Short version. When you've written your book, you need to send it to someone, and there is just about no chance that this someone is also a Scrivener user. Besides, even if they were, well, you only really want them to see your manuscript, don't you? You don't want to waste the time schlepping through all of your research, and you definitely don't want to see the way you've ditched the prologue into the bin. Okay, probably not. This someone could be an editor or a publisher, fine, in which case, actually, also, they will want a document in Microsoft Word format, not in Scrivener's. It could also be that you intend to publish your book yourself, in which case you might want an EPUB version or Word or text. You know, there are different things you could want, but not Scrivener. So depending on how you're doing it, lots of options. For all of this, and actually for a stunning amount more, you use Scrivener's compile feature. You are taking all of your chapters and compiling them into one document to be exported, one document file to be created, and that file is in the particular format you need. To do this, you will choose the File menu and way down there at the bottom, Compile. And you get this. I said we were going to cover why writers do not like Scrivener, and there's bits and pieces to say in a minute, but this is actually one of the reasons. Because look at that list of formats on the left. It looks good, looks comprehensive, because it is. But then next to it we have section layouts. For any one of those formats, you get a lot of options, not all of them visible there yet. And then the last column, that's going to be a list of all of the chapters in your book, and you can tick to include or exclude any of them as you want. You can specify that one part is front matter, that another is back matter, also things like that. And when you felt that this is all quite comprehensive enough, thank you, look at the top of the dialog box. Compile for print, PDF, Word, EPUB. It goes on, every one of them with different sections, different options. Scrivener is unquestionably powerful. And the things you can do within all of this to tightly control the layout of every page is, I mean, it's nothing short of amazing. Now, usually, I just want the text. So I might in fact race through this saying, fine, yes, whatever, Microsoft Word format, that'll do if you must. Okay, off you go. But I did once do a project, and I can't remember why. It was really, really important that I laid out the chapters. Chapters started on the right page, headers and footers, things, sections were just so many things. Countless things, except, well, actually, I kind of started to count, I think I gave up. I went through this same compile process over 40 times with this one project before I fiddled it into just what I wanted. That is a reason some writers don't like Scrivener, the potential complexity. But then this is also why in the next edition, you and I are going to be talking about using Scrivener on the iPad, amongst other things. But briefly, the Scrivener app for iPad, it was entirely rewritten, and compile had grown over years. It was very complicated. The new compile feature is not as powerful on the iPad, but it's therefore also simpler, which you'll see. Last thing for today, though, other reasons for not liking and using Scrivener. And one of them, not to be ignored, is kind of the opposite of a reason I like it. We're both writers, but what's an enjoyable app to write in for you may not be for me, or vice versa. Word, like I said, seems heavy going, for instance, but of course, so many writers and authors like Word. I feel they may not have just seen the light yet, but, as long as they're happy. Another reason is that actually Word is the lingua franca of publishing. Your editor or publisher will expect Word. I mean, they assume there's nothing else, really. That's how common it is. They won't recognize and they may not accept anything else. Can get quite mad about it, weirdly. You can compile a Word version of your Scrivener document, so fine, it's not a problem. But then if you're working with an editor in Word and they send back your text with, for example, Word's track changes features, now it's a problem. Scrivener does not recognize Word's tracked changes. This is actually, I think, why the makers, Literature and Latte, sometimes say that Scrivener is best for your first draft. I actually think that's underselling the app, but the track changes thing can be an issue. If it is an issue for you, I should say, Apple's Pages, by the way, does support Word's track changes. So you can read them on your Mac or your iPad without having to buy Word. And actually, you can work on them in Pages and you can export them back to Word. You can create a Word document from Pages, but that's not from Scrivener. Then this business, right, this brilliant business of having all of your research in the same Scrivener document as you're writing, as your manuscript, that can actually cause a problem if you're not careful and if you are using Scrivener on more than one device. So if you're using it on a Mac and a MacBook, or a MacBook and an iPad, you get the concept. Any two or more devices, the short answer is you've got to close your Scrivener document on one device before you open it on another, or there are issues. There's also a syncing thing about how Scrivener documents, how they can be shared across these multiple devices. But yeah, we should get into that in part 2. I think that will be when using mobile stuff. Last thing, very last thing, and unfortunately this is really rare. It is possible that Scrivener will crash. Now, given that Word crashes about every other hour, it seems to me that could be a shrug. But the crashing seems to happen when you are over at least 100,000 words in the same document. There isn't a number for this. There isn't a fixed thing. I'm only going by the one horrendous moment. A friend, actually a 58 Keys Patreon, Darren, his document died. I went pale when he said it. He managed to retrieve almost all of it, fortunately. But whiskey, everything. Scrivener isn't flawless then. But those split editing windows, that's a lifesaver for me. That business, being able to zoom through the binder and see what chapters I'm done with, fantastic. Rearrange them, group them together, yes. And then there are so many other little features that we will definitely come to in part 3 and maybe 4 if you want. But for now, that's it for this first of 4 Scrivener specials on 58 keys. As I say, links to all 4 editions will be in the description of each video as each one comes out. And remember, please, the last one is a live edition that will see me trying to answer questions. So, anything you can ask me in advance, it will help hugely. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for watching. Now, take care of yourself. Write more in Scrivener or anything else, and I'll see you soon with the next of this month's Scrivener specials.